In the long chronicle of the British monarchy, few figures have traversed a trajectory as precipitous as Prince Andrew, Duke of York. A veteran of the Falklands conflict, he was once celebrated as a dashing and capable royale, a naval hero, and the favored son of Queen Elizabeth II. Yet, by the third decade of the 21st century, his name had become inextricably linked not with service or duty, but with one of the most notorious criminal networks of the modern era. This is not a story of simple scandal. It is an examination of proximity to power, the mechanics of enabling, and the ultimate cost of a friendship forged in the darkest of shadows. This is the case of Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. The nexus of this story is not a palace, but a person, Ghislaine Maxwell. The daughter of the media tycoon Robert Maxwell, she possessed a unique social currency that allowed her to move seamlessly between the worlds of British aristocracy and American wealth. It was through Maxwell that Prince Andrew, then in his late 30s, was introduced to the American financier Jeffrey Epstein. The precise date of their first meeting remains a matter of some dispute, but by the late 1990s, the association was firmly established. To Prince Andrew, he appeared to be a generous and well-connected friend, offering access to private jets, exotic travel, and a global network of influential contacts. But the Epstein milieu contained a hidden architecture. It was a carefully constructed enterprise of procurement and abuse, designed to recruit, traffic, and exploit underage girls. In 2019, federal prosecutors would describe it as a vast network of underage victims for the pleasure of Epstein and his associates. Among those who came forward was Virginia Giuffre. In sworn statements and civil filings, Ms. Giuffre alleged that she was recruited by Maxwell as a teenager and was directed to have sexual encounters with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. The first of these, she stated, took place in 2001 at Maxwell's London residence. Her accounts were detailed and specific, including the assertion that the prince perspired heavily upon her, a detail that would later become a focal point of his public defense. For years, these allegations remained largely outside the mainstream discourse, overshadowed by Epstein's legal maneuvering and the protective membrane of privilege surrounding the royal family.
In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to Florida state charges of soliciting a minor for prostitution. He served 13 months in a county jail, much of it on work release, a sentence widely condemned as anemic and indicative of the leniency afforded to the wealthy. Despite this conviction, the friendship with Prince Andrew endured. In December 2010, just 2 years after Epstein's release, the prince was photographed with him in New York's Central Park. He was also a guest at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. When later questioned about this visit, the prince characterized it as an opportunity to sever the relationship in person, a decision he described as the honorable thing to do. However, subsequent email evidence revealed that the prince and Epstein remained in contact beyond this date. In one communication, the prince wrote to Epstein, "It would seem we are in this together and will have to rise above it. Stay in close touch." The correspondence suggests a continuity of connection that contradicted his public statements. The allegations against Prince Andrew entered the public record in 2015 during a Florida civil case. Virginia Giuffre's testimony was filed under oath, and the prince was named directly. Buckingham Palace issued denials at the time, calling the claims false and without foundation. Yet the statements remained in the legal record, creating a lingering cloud of suspicion that refused to dissipate. The death of Jeffrey Epstein by suicide in August of 2019, while awaiting federal trial on new sex trafficking charges, fundamentally altered the landscape. With the primary perpetrator silenced, scrutiny intensified upon those in his orbit. and upon the question of who knew what and when. Phasing mounting pressure and the release of previously sealed court documents, Prince Andrew made a strategic decision that would prove catastrophic. In November 2019, he granted an extended interview to the BBC's Newsnight program, conducted by the journalist Emily Maitlis. The interview was intended to address the allegations directly and restore his public standing. Instead, it became a singular example of how not to respond to serious accusations. When confronted with Ms. Giuffre's account of dancing with him at the Tramp nightclub in London, the prince offered a remarkably specific alibi. He stated that he had spent the evening at a Pizza Express restaurant in the town of Woking with his daughter, before returning home. He further addressed Ms. Giuffre's recollection of his perspiration by citing a medical condition, an adrenaline overdose sustained during the Falklands War, which he claimed rendered him unable to sweat. The assertions were met with widespread incredulity, both for their improbability and for their apparent trivialization of the allegations.
Well, there again, I'm not one to be able to answer that question, because I'm just as much in the dark as many people. And something to do with a bone in his neck. It has been what I would describe as a constant sore in a constant drip, if you see what I mean, in bringing everybody together so that we're all pushing in the same direction. And I don't wish to appear grand, but I didn't, if you see what I mean, interact with them in a way that was, you don't go to stay with people looking for that.
You'd notice if there were hundreds of underage girls in Buckingham Palace.
God, I think it was quite as you might put it, but yeah, okay, I was there for it. I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. It is a positive act to have sex with somebody. It's almost a mental health issue to some extent for me, in the sense that it's been nagging at my mind for a great many years. Social media, there is a whole range of 7 to 14-year-olds in the United Kingdom, or just over 500,000 young people who are using the service. It is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. There are all sorts of things that are on the internet and out there in the public domain. It was almost impossible for me to sweat. There was no indication, absolutely no indication. And if there was, I'm sorry, I'm being polite, in the sense that he was a sex offender. But no, as soon as somebody reminded me of it, I went, oh yes, I remember that. I'm an engaging person. I kick myself for on a daily basis. Probably 4 times in total. The truth of it is that I don't drink, because in the Navy, you would notice if there were hundreds of underage girls in Jeffrey's house. Yes.
Do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein?
No, it was a shooting weekend. What they were doing and why they were there, I had nothing to do with. So now I went there with the sole purpose of saying to him, oh, it's definitely me. I mean, that's a picture of me. Jeffrey's house wasn't there, not when I was there. Now, he may have changed his behavior. I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened.
The most damaging exchange concerned his attitude toward the Epstein friendship. Ms. Maitlis asked directly whether he regretted it. The prince replied, "Now still not. The people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn were actually very useful." The response, framing a convicted sex offender as a useful contact,
revealed a profound failure to grasp the gravity of the situation. The public and press reaction was immediate and unforgiving. Within days, the prince announced he was stepping back from royal duties for the foreseeable future. The palace had effectively cut him loose. He would not appear in a public royal capacity again. Following the collapse of his public standing, Prince Andrew retreated from view. But the legal machinery continued to turn. In August 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against him in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. The suit alleged sexual assault and battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress arising from the encounters she claimed occurred when she was 17. The prince's legal team mounted a vigorous defense, seeking to have the case dismissed on the grounds of a 2009 settlement agreement between Ms. Giuffre and Jeffrey Epstein 2022. The parties announced a settlement. The financial terms were not disclosed publicly, but reports estimated the sum to be approximately £12 million, to be paid to Ms. Giuffre's charity for victim support. Crucially, the settlement included no admission of liability or wrongdoing by the prince. However, it did contain a statement acknowledging that Ms. Giuffre has suffered as a victim of sexual abuse. The funding of the settlement became a subject of intense speculation. Subsequent reporting indicated that the late Queen Elizabeth II and the Prince of Wales, now King Charles III, contributed significant personal funds to facilitate the settlement, effectively shielding Prince Andrew from financial ruin at the cost of immense familial and institutional embarrassment. In the wake of the settlement, the Queen stripped her son of his remaining military affiliations and royal patronages. He was also prohibited from using the style His Royal Highness in any official capacity. While Prince Andrew retreated into a form of internal exile at Royal Lodge in Windsor, the broader machinery of justice continued to operate. In December 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted on 5 federal counts of sex trafficking and related crimes. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The conviction of the woman who had introduced him to Epstein served as a stark reminder of the company he had kept. Yet for the prince, the legal jeopardy was not over. The ongoing release of documents related to the Epstein case and continuing investigations by US and UK authorities into potential misconduct ensured that the matter remained active. By early 2026, the pressure had become untenable for the palace and the government.
In a move without modern precedent, King Charles III moved to formally separate his brother from the institution of the monarchy entirely. In late 2025, it was announced that Prince Andrew would no longer be referred to as a Prince of the United Kingdom, nor would he hold the title Duke of York. He became, in the eyes of the Crown, a private citizen. The statement issued by the palace was notable for its directness, expressing explicit sympathy for all victims of abuse. The subtext was clear. The institution could no longer bear any association with the allegations. However unresolved, they remained in a court of law. The culmination of this long process occurred in February 2026. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he was now known, was arrested on the Sandringham estate and taken into custody for questioning regarding allegations of misconduct in public office, stemming from his time as a trade envoy and his associations with Epstein. The legal process will now determine Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's culpability in the eyes of the law. But the historical judgment has already been rendered. The tragedy of this story is not the fall of a prince. The tragedy resides in the lives disrupted, the childhood stolen, and the decades of silence endured by those who were trafficked, abused, and disbelieved. Virginia Giuffre died by suicide in 2025. She was 41 years old. Her pursuit of accountability ended without the trial she had sought. In the final analysis, the friendship between a British prince and an American predator serves as a case study in how wealth, status, and institutional protection can shield individuals from consequence for years, even decades. The gates of Royal Lodge have closed. The titles have been stripped. The music has stopped. But the questions, for the survivors and for history, remain.